If you have ever heard of famous American folk tales, you must have known giants like Paul Bunyan, the great lumberjack and his blue ox babe, or John Henry, the man who challenged the steel machine with his own strength. But in the Wild West, where the land was arid and sandstorms were raging, there was another legend that was equally great, Pecos Bill, the legendary cowboy who tamed the Wild West. It is said that without Bill, the West today could not have become a land for people to live. Because he was not only a cowboy, but also a hero with supernatural strength, ingenuity, and a little madness, the true qualities of those who lived in the vast wilderness. With a lasso in hand, his whistle as loud as thunder, Bill tamed nature, defeated wild animals, controlled even the fiercest tornadoes, and created immortal legends that have been passed down through the generations. The West of the 19th century was not a promised land filled with roses. It was a place where migrants faced the challenges of survival. Thirst in the desert, wild animals lurking in the jungle, bandits roaming along the road, and dust storms that covered the sky. It was in this harsh landscape that folk legends were born. People needed stories to believe in the power of man, that with courage and resilience, we can overcome the harsh nature. And Pecos Bill was the most vivid symbol of that belief. The name Pecos Bill comes from the Pecos River, where many of his exploits were associated. According to legend, Bill drank an entire river just to quench his thirst on a hot day. It is rumored that Bill just had to tap his heels on the ground to open up new canyons, and his whistle could stop a herd of wild horses immediately. With the typical exaggeration of tall tales culture, giant anecdotes, the image of Pecos Bill gradually grew larger than life, becoming an immortal cowboy in the imagination of the Western people. Interestingly, Pecos Bill is not only told as a heroic character, but also has a humorous and wild side, which makes his story more attractive than ever. People laugh heartily when hearing about the time Bill rode a tornado, controlling it like a wild horse. They both admire and laugh when hearing about him shooting down the moon just to have light to find his way home. Bill wasn't perfect, and it's that excess that makes him such a unique icon in the American folklore. Today, when people think of the West, many immediately think of cowboys riding on horseback under a red sunset sky. But if you ask Americans who the greatest cowboy ever was, Pecos Bill's name will surely come to mind first. He didn't just tame the West. He tamed the imaginations of millions. Part 2. A Strange Childhood. If a hero was born from the ordinary, it certainly wasn't Pecos Bill. Legend has it that, even as a baby, his life was tied to the extraordinary and the tragic. Bill's family were pioneers, heading west in search of the promised land. They rode their wagons across the arid Texas plains, under the blazing sun, while the sound of the wheels grinding on the cracked earth echoed as a warning of the harshness of the land. Bill was the youngest child in a large family. It is said that he was so naughty that his family could barely control him. He cried loudly, tossed and turned, and once almost overturned the wagon. On a long journey, when the wagon passed through the wild land along the Pecos River, his family was forced to stop and rest. It was here that a fateful event occurred. Bill, being so naughty, fell out of the carriage, rolling in the dust. When the family discovered it, it was too late. The carriage continued rolling, leaving the little boy alone in the vast wilderness. No one knows exactly what happened next, but legend has it that Bill did not die. Instead, he was discovered by a pack of wolves. Wolves are predators and never show mercy to humans. However, when the mother wolf saw the little boy with his eyes shining with pride, she decided to take him home. So Bill grew up among the wolves, learning to survive like a real wild animal. He learned to howl at the moon, learned to hunt, run faster than the wind, and even wrestle with wild animals. It is said that when he was only 6 years old, Bill dared to confront a mountain leopard, and with his incredible strength, the boy not only escaped death, but also made the animal run away. By the age of 10, Bill was said to have been able to take down a bear 3 times his size with his bare hands. His courage and bravery made the wolf pack consider him a true member, a wolf in human skin. But Bill was not only strong, but also possessed a sharp mind and extraordinary adaptability. He observed the wolves, learned how to organize the pack, learned to communicate with his eyes and gestures. From then on, Bill became a hybrid creature between man and nature, strong, wild, but still with the heart of a human. Then one day, Bill met his own kind again. A group of settlers passed by where the wolf pack lived. They were amazed to see a muscular young man with long, messy hair and eyes that shone like a wild beast, running and jumping with the wolves. At first, Bill was unfamiliar with humans. He howled instead of talking, crawled on all fours instead of walking on two legs. But gradually, an experienced cowboy approached Bill, patiently taught him to speak human language, taught him to ride a horse, taught him to understand what human life is. However, the wild instinct never left Bill. He still loved to lie on his back in the grasslands and howl at the moon, still easily angered when provoked, and still retained the extraordinary strength of a man born in harsh nature. People said that because of his childhood growing up among wolves, Pecos Bill became a man with extraordinary abilities, strong as wild animals, flexible as the land of the West, and full of indomitable spirit. The story of Bill's strange childhood has been passed down everywhere. Each person tells it differently, but all agree on one point. Bill is not an ordinary child. He is a gift of nature, the crystallization of wild power and the desire to conquer of mankind. It is that special foundation that laid the foundation for him to become the greatest cowboy in the history of American legend. Part 3. Becoming a legendary cowboy. After leaving the wolves and learning to live like a man, Pecos Bill quickly became one of the most unusual young men in the West. The veteran cowboys initially laughed at the sight of a young man with long hair, ragged clothes, speaking with a lisp, and occasionally howling like a wolf. But in a short time, they realized that Bill had abilities that no one else could match. He learned to ride faster than anyone else, used the lasso as if it were an extension of his own arm, and did things that were beyond imagination. It is said that Bill not only tamed the wildest horses, but also invented techniques that would later become cowboy traditions. It was Bill who first turned a rope into a lasso, a noose used to catch cattle. When he threw the rope, it flew like lightning, and the circle was so wide that Bill once lassoed an entire valley full of buffalo. Other cowboys had to work weeks to round up the cattle, but Bill only needed a few hours. One of Bill's greatest feats was the time he tamed Widowmaker, a wild horse that no one dared to approach. The horse was so called because anyone who tried to ride it was thrown to death, leaving his wife a widow. But Bill was undaunted. With strength and tenacity, he jumped on its back and let it kick, spin, somersault, and roar. For 3 days and 3 nights, Bill and the horse dueled. In the end, Bill won. From then on, Widowmaker became his loyal companion, accompanying him all over the West. In addition to taming wild animals, Bill also faced nature. When a storm arose, instead of running away, Bill rode his horse straight into the middle of a tornado. The scene was described as dreamlike. Amidst the swirling dust and thunder, a cowboy stood tall on horseback, laughing and controlling the storm like a tamed animal. Bill later rode the tornado across Texas, leaving traces on the ground that are believed to be the canyons and valleys of today. Legend has it that Bill was the involuntary architect of many natural wonders. He dug a channel for the Rio Grande by simply pulling a rope down hard into the ground. He created the Grand Canyon by dragging a giant lasso to find a lost calf. It is even said that the Pecos Desert was formed after Bill rode a storm so hard that it blew away all the vegetation, leaving the land barren. However, not all of Bill's exploits were destructive. Many stories say he helped villagers fight off bandits, protected wagon trains, and taught young cowboys how to drive cattle. Bill became a living legend, respected by everyone. Wherever he went, from Texas to New Mexico, people exclaimed, "Nobody rides a horse like Pecos Bill, nobody throws a rope like Pecos Bill, and nobody laughs like Pecos Bill." What was special about Bill was that he was both scary and witty. He had tremendous strength, but he liked to joke and exaggerate his actions. When recounting his adventures, Bill often added details to the point of absurdity, like how he once rode a lightning bolt like a horse, or captured the moon to use as a lamp to light the way. The more these stories were passed on, the more Bill's image became great, both believable and fantastical. However, behind the laughter, Bill was truly a symbol of the spirit of the West, resilient, creative, and unyielding in the face of difficulties. He did not back down from nature, but challenged and conquered it. He did not accept limits, but always sought to overcome them. Therefore, Pecos Bill was not just an ordinary cowboy, but a legendary cowboy, the one who turned the West into a land where survival and development could take place. Part 4. Love and Slue-Foot Sue. During his extraordinary life, Pecos Bill accomplished countless feats. He subdued wild horses, tamed buffalo, defeated notorious bandits, and even rode a tornado like a wild horse. But all these feats, no matter how glorious, never touched Bill's heart. Until one day, fate brought him the only woman, and the last, to enter the legendary cowboy's heart, Slue-Foot Sue. It is said that Bill met Sue on a bright sunny afternoon on the Rio Grande. Her laughter rang like silver bells across the water, and when Bill turned around, he couldn't believe his eyes. Before him was a strange and unbelievable sight, a young woman with golden hair and eyes as blue as the western sky, riding a giant fish. That fish was no ordinary fish. It was as big as a horse, whipping its tail and making waves. But Slue-Foot Sue was fearless. She sat up straight, waving her cowboy hat, and rode with a laugh. In that moment, Bill knew he had found someone who was his equal. For years, Bill had thought there was no one strong enough, bold enough to stand next to him. But Sue proved otherwise. She dared to ride what no man in the West had ever dared to do. Bill was instantly captivated. He jumped down to the riverbank, whistled loudly, and with superhuman strength, he pulled the giant fish and Sue onto the sand. But instead of being surprised or afraid, Sue just winked teasingly. "Who are you to interrupt the most exciting ride of my life?" Bill, for the first time in his life, had nothing more to boast about. He awkwardly introduced himself, and so began a love affair as wild and fierce as the Wild West itself. The love story of Pecos Bill and Slue-Foot Sue spread like a whirlwind across the prairie. It was said that when they rode horses together through the prairie, the whole herd of cattle stopped and looked up to see them. The couple was like two bright stars in the western sky, a symbol of strength, freedom, and passion. Bill loved Sue not only for her beauty, but also for her personality, brave, intelligent, stubborn, but full of charm. Sue, on the other hand, was also attracted to the man who could face nature and still laugh heartily. And so Bill decided he would marry Sue. Their wedding became a legendary event. All the cowboys, cattlemen, and even Bill's former rivals gathered. People butchered cows, grilled meat, built campfires, drank whiskey, and sang for days. But in American folk tales, happiness often comes with challenges. On the wedding day, Sue wanted to prove that she was no less than Bill. She showed off her big wedding dress, along with the elastic steel skirt that she believed would give her a unique riding style. Sue told everyone that she would ride the wild horse Widowmaker, the wildest horse in the West, which even Bill had taken days to subdue. Bill initially objected, but Sue was too proud to give up. As cheers rang out, Sue climbed onto Widowmaker's back, her white wedding dress flying. At first, she kept her balance well, but after a few seconds, the wild horse began to struggle wildly. It jumped, it spun, it kicked, and then, if it had been just a normal fall, Bill might have saved her. But the elastic steel skirt turned into a death trap. Every time Sue fell to the ground, the steel skirt bounced her back up higher into the sky. It was said that Sue bounced, fell, and bounced again, dozens, hundreds of times, higher than the cactus, higher than the Red Rock Mountain. Bill and the villagers ran after her, stretching nooses and shouting, but no one could hold Sue back. The last time, Sue jumped so high that she disappeared into the blue sky. It was believed that she flew straight to the moon, and from then on, Bill never saw his lover again. That humorous and sad ending devastated Pecos Bill. He, who had defeated tornadoes and tamed wild horses, was helpless before a love tragedy. From that day on, Bill lived a wandering life on the prairie, no longer mentioning marriage, nor looking for another girl. Folklore has it that every time he sat alone on the banks of the Pecos River, Bill would look up at the moon, smile bitterly, and whisper, "Sue is still there, riding the giant fish in the sea of stars." Part 5. Pecos Bill and the Image of the West. Pecos Bill is not just a folk character. He is the living embodiment of the spirit of the American West, a free-spirited, indomitable spirit, always confronting harsh nature and challenges that seem beyond human strength. When people mention the West, the first image that appears is often the endless prairie, red rocks glowing under the sunset, and cowboys roaming on horseback. But above all, people remember Bill, the cowboy who turned the fierce nature into his own playground. In folk tales, Bill has a special connection with nature. He not only lives in it, but also becomes one with it. When thirsty, Bill does not need to find a well. He can squeeze a cloud dry to drink water. When hungry, he only needs to blow a breath, and the whole herd of cows will run towards him. It is said that Bill understood the wind, knew how to call the rain, and could even whistle to change the course of a river. The image of Bill lives on not because of his surreal feats, but because he represents the spirit of daring to confront, daring to laugh, and daring to live life to the fullest, the spirit that an entire nation wanted to send to the Wild West.